Hello world, I'm Matt Lucas and I learned a lot from the recent One Championship USA debut because I worked a lot with Stamp Fairtex for this camp and also for her fight. I want to tell you the big 3 lessons that I took away from this experience. But first, I want to tell you how I got there because I was not supposed to be there. So I work as the Director of Public Relations for Fairtex Training Center. It's a great job. I'm very, very blessed to have it. I love it. And for a long time I've been teaching Stamp English. Every Wednesday, we've gone on a US seminar tour together. It was a great experience. So we have a little bit of a background working together. Stamp leading up to this fight in Colorado was sponsored by MMA Warehouse, which is an up-and-coming distribution website for gear, specifically, MMA, Muay Thai, everything. They're gonna sell Fairtex gear and it will be available for purchase on the site direct to you. So they were going to sponsor Stamp. They were going to bring her out to Colorado for early acclimatization because it's in Colorado. The elevation is real. Especially, when I was out there, I went jogging a little bit. I was huffing and puffing. Whereas when I go jogging out here, as fine as David Hasselhoff on Baywatch. So they needed to bring Stamp out early. They were gonna bring her out a month early, get an Airbnb, drive her around, do everything, buy food, groceries, everything. Then Bangkok happened. The owner of, one of the 2 owners of MMA Warehouse was bang, hit by a truck while on a motorbike. Luckily he survived. He's okay. We're very, very happy that he's okay, and we're very blessed that he was wearing a helmet. Wear a helmet on a motorbike out here in Bangkok, so he's okay. But obviously that muddled up the plans for America for Stamp. She was gonna go with her Thai trainer and she was gonna leave on Saturday. On Monday, the Thai trainer's passport was denied. So my direct boss, Prem, said, Matt, I need you to go to America. And I said, okay, let's go. And so I got on a plane with Stamp to America. Initially, it was gonna be for a week. Then I saw how much work was needed.
It's so much work to keep it healthy and green. And
so I stayed for the entire month. So let's go over the big 3 lessons that I learned in that month stay with Stamp. 1, just basic fight tactics. I do not have a ton of experience in MMA. Now I have a lot more. I was thrown into the MMA world and learned a lot. So I want to tell you exactly what I learned and some of the dynamics of the fight that we worked on in the camp. So we went to a gym called High Altitude Martial Arts in Colorado. The owner there, Corey, did a great job at telling us some basic principles. So he basically breaks down MMA into 3 ranges and 3 levels, which I think is a great way of looking at things. So first there's far off, there's within striking, and then there's like a grappling range. Then in terms of levels of the body, there's low, mid, and high. So he breaks it all down very systematically.
Make ready to land our troops beyond their energy field, then deploy the fleet so that nothing gets off the system.
So that was very helpful when I was looking at things with Stamp. We also worked with a BJJ black belt, Valor, who is very, very helpful. He works a lot with women and smaller athletes. He really talked about making sure that your frames were correct. So if someone is trying to pass guard on you to go from, go into a side control, you really need to have good frames to prevent them from coming in and smothering you. The other thing, and I think Stamp showed this in her fight, is you need to stick on to people, especially when you're smaller. You stick onto them. So in the first round, there was a moment where Stamp was on Alyse's back, just boom, very connected to her. By connecting so hard, she tired out Alyse, showed a little bit of dominance. And then, of course, he reinforced continual learning, which I think is a great lesson for everyone.
I'm learning many things, like I'm a pet and ugly.
I did a little bit of work with Sean Madden from Easton Training Center, who works with a lot of UFC fighters and MMA fighters on their striking. He does a lot of reactive pad work with his athletes, so he won't be like, okay, 1, 2. He will be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And then sometimes he will also have the athlete throw, and he will pull the pad away and potentially grab them, do a takedown to check their balance. This is something that I did with Stamp regularly. Okay, hold for the ready, Stamp, cross, boom, grab. Because that is something that happens in the fight. Also, shooting in for potential takedowns. And she actually did very, very well with that. So well that she practiced it with Mitch Gilson in the warm-up room. Bang! Mitch goes for a takedown. Stamp lands a perfect knee on him. So that is something that I learned. The other one is when you are moving around the cage, you need to move around in a J. So when you don't want to back straight up, this is also for ring work as well. You want to move back and then circle out, back and then circle out. That is something we practiced a lot with Stamp. And then also, if you are up against the rope or the cage, and the person is on top of you, you need to spin and then attack. That is something that J.D. Hardwick and Bruno Calvero, two of her other coaches, worked with Stamp on, and she performed it beautifully. That is how she got that big knockout win. Basically, turn and kick. Very, very classic Muay Thai. And that's what got her the knockout. There were a couple of other things that we worked on, specifically some basic footwork, making sure not to rhythm step.
Be careful of the step miss.
Which is when the athlete will pull back and then move in. It just creates an extra half beat in your footwork, in your dynamic, that is unnecessary. Because you're fighting in small gloves, you really need to get your head off center line when you're attacking. You cannot take too many of these hard punches to the dome. I've seen it countless times, especially with this striking in the small gloves at Fairtex fight. You get bonked once, oh, good night. So those are some of the big lessons I learned in terms of MMA and just fight tactics. So, the different ranges from Hama, ranges and levels, then Valor with the connectedness, the continual learning, and the understanding of frames when you are working with someone. Then the other tactics, moving in a J, and when you are backed up, turn, attack, turn, attack. When someone shoots in on you, okay, sprawl, attack, sprawl, knee. Making sure that you're not backing up directly, you're doing more of a J, and if you do get caught up, turn, attack. Okay, so those were some of the big first lessons that I learned in terms of ring and fighting tactics. The second thing, and I think this is very important because it comes from more of a managerial and logistics point, is how much planning goes into these camps.
An analysis of the plans provided by Princess Leia has demonstrated a weakness in the battle station.
It's a tremendous amount, and it's one of the reasons why I stayed for longer with STAMP. It requires a lot of planning and execution to have a successful camp. All the medicals, so we had to go see an eye doctor, a blood doctor, a physical, and we had to do this multiple times, contacting all these people and all these different places where it's very difficult. So the eye doctors, we had to schedule like 2-3 weeks ahead of time. The physical was 4 or 5 days ahead of time, and that can really skew your planning for your training schedule. For the training schedule itself, we mirrored very closely to Thailand, which had its pros and cons. So we worked out at home, then we would drive 30 minutes, 40 minutes to Hama for wrestling practice, come home, eat, rest, then go in the evening to Easton for striking training. Doing all that driving is very tiring. If Stem just would not be able to drive herself, so I drove a lot, which required a lot of planning in terms of gas, and I did run out of gas once. And then just coordinating food and where everyone is, then also getting the right training partners. You know, sometimes training partners would be there, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes the schedule would change. So just acclimatizing to all that was very difficult. You know, having a schedule was very good though, and necessary. I think that if we had just sort of tried to wing it, it would have fallen apart. So it was very important to have that schedule, to have that plan. Additionally, in terms of logistics, we had a lot of interviews to do. Stam gets interviewed a lot. People love her. You know, she's a press magnet. On my end, that required scheduling interviews. You know, Stamp needs to rest. So when is a good time to interview? How long is this interview? And usually it's back and forth a few times in order to even schedule the interview. I worked as a interpreter translator at times, which, you know, was fun and also difficult because my Thai is intermediate, but you know, we got it done. So these are all things that logistically can be very difficult, and things you need to keep in mind when you are doing a camp. It made me very empathetic towards Western athletes that are driving, that are doing all these things, because it's difficult. Here in Thailand, you just eat, train, everything is here at the camp. It makes life so much easier. You know, doing the extra media work is not so much of a big deal because everything is here. All the doctors are in one hospital. It makes life way easier. The other issue, of course, was the weather. Just logistically, it was difficult because it got very cold. It snowed. I do not like the cold. So, you know, scraping the frost off the windows was difficult. It stormed. I do not generally drive out here in Thailand. I drove more in America than I have in the last 7 years out here in Thailand. So all those things made the trip more difficult. But it taught me a lot about the importance of logistics, the importance of having and creating a plan and trying to stick to it. We were successful in that we hit our training schedule about 80% of the time. There were obviously issues, you know, mornings that were too cold to train at home or too cold to go running, medicals, so we could not train at certain times. But overall, we hit 80% of our training schedule, which I think is not ideal, but good enough. The last thing that I really learned about was the marketing side of things. So because of the sponsorship with MMA Warehouse, we did daily vlogs. We produced 13 vlogs, which got 1.4 which reached 1.4 million accounts, had an 8% engagement rate on Instagram, did very, very well. And what I did was I filmed, I was with Stamp all the time, so I just filmed what was going on, and then at the end of the day, I edited it into a fun clip. As we progressed, I put in a pre-roll ad, so early ad basically, about the 8-second mark. What I noticed was the most viewers were watching for about 8 seconds, so bang, at the 8-second mark was the ad. There was also an ad at the end thanking them as a sponsor. Doing it, I learned a lot about video editing, what people were looking for, what people liked. And also I was able to do a marketing class at Easton Training Center, which was a good opportunity for me to go over some of the marketing tips that I've learned both from Stamp and just in general practice. Marketing is very, very important. It's something that One Championship and Stamp does very well. And because of that, there's way more opportunities for them and the promotion. Just being able to look behind the scenes at all the marketing work, and producing the content itself was super helpful and taught me a lot of hands-on things. So those are some of the things that I learned from this trip, going over again, just a lot of MMA tactics. I just brushed the surface. There's more things that I learned. 2 is the importance of logistics, the importance of planning, because things do go wrong and you need a plan. 3rd is a lot of the marketing information. Doing all the vlogs, doing all the videos taught me a lot about editing, a lot about engagement, a lot about how to deal with sponsorship packages. This camp would not have been possible without a tremendous amount of help from a lot of people, including JD, including Bruno, Coke and Nuxium, Prem, Mr. Wong, Jason Boneworth, all the people at Hama, Easton Training Center, the people at One Championship. I learned a tremendous amount over the last month, so really, really appreciate everyone being so patient and helping out, because Stamp basically got the best possible outcome. She fought a very, very worthy opponent, was able to knock her out in the 2nd round, come out of the fight on her, and make $50,000. Big things are coming from Stamp, and hopefully you were able to learn something from my experience and we can grow the sport together. Thank you so much.